name is kind of special to us because Aara is a made-up name. I was writing an email to somebody and saying that this barbecue my friend was having was going to be a grand affair. And it came out as a typo, it came out Aara, so I looked it up, and apparently fiar, the root word for fiar, means trust. And so we found that trusting each other in rehearsal and on stage was really important to us. So the name stuck for us. So the Aara is a string quartet. We're moving to Toronto now, transitioning over the summer. We used to live in New York City, where we were in residence at the Juilliard School. And now we're going to be taking up a residency at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto. In a quartet, you have to trust each other because sometimes, for instance, first of all, in performance, if my colleague does something differently and tosses me a melody or a fragment of the melody in a different way, I have to react differently. So let's say Valerie, my first violinist, is sending me that melody. She has to trust me that I'm listening and that I can catch her in that way, and I have to trust her that she won't throw me the ball in such a way that I'll miss it. And then we have to trust each other in rehearsal. For instance, if somebody is really trying to go for something in terms of something that I'm missing, I have to trust that whoever is telling me this is doing it for the best of purposes and not because of some kind of sour grapes motive or something like that. So you have to trust each other within the working environment as well. But something that I really think is important is to improvise off of a text. So for instance, you see someone like Obama giving a great speech, he's not reading off the page, right? He's actually, in some ways, improvising what he's trying to say, speaking, communicating directly with an audience. Sometimes we look at Haydn, an old Haydn quartet, and many times we're really trying to feel like we're improvising off an idea. So if something is really exciting or something, so let's say that Haydn wrote something in such a way that it was supposed to surprise the audience, we try to go back to the first time someone's going to hear it and try to introduce it to them that way. It's actually kind of a funny story. My mother teaches piano, and she tried teaching me piano, but that didn't really work out. So she had mentioned maybe you want to learn an instrument where you can have friends, kind of the way that I'm doing now with my quartet, or you can play in orchestra and things like that. So I really tried to find one of these instruments. I didn't want to play violin. I thought the violin was for girls, and I was young. The cello, I thought that was a bassoon, and so I thought that was really, really manly. You know, like this giant wind instrument, and then when my mom brought me to see the cello, we had already driven all this way, and she says, look, we already bought the instrument. This is actually a cello. I said, Mom, I told you I didn't want to play the violin. You hate me. This is the biggest violin you could find. You know, so, but then I grew to love the instrument, really. Like, there's only a couple of Beethovens. Actually, there's only one Beethoven, really. And there's only one Mozart, one Haydn. But unless you directly engage with young composers or composers writing today, you could really be missing out on that interaction. You know, Beethoven and Mozart, Haydn, they all had these instrumentalists that were their friends that would tell them, oh, that this doesn't work or this does work, so the composers can actually hear what they're writing as they're writing it. It's very important, that kind of relationship. But then now and again, you can find some compositions that really speak directly to your soul, to what you're trying to say. They grab you by the lapels and tell you a message of great importance. And some of the program for Harborfront celebrates that, but it also has some fun-loving things. So, for instance, there's a composer now, Michael Dougherty. He wrote a piece called Elvis Everywhere. And what it is it's a string quartet, and we're playing a bunch of like Elvis-inspired licks, and we mimic a lot of the stuff that he does, like some of the vocalisms that he does with glisses and his vibrato, his heavy vibrato, and some of the liquid sex appeal that Elvis had. There's a certain amount of that in Elvis Everywhere, and there's actually a recording of 3 Elvis impersonators singing and talking like Elvis as we play. So it's actually a very zany, very fun piece, but it also has a depth to it that at the end of the piece, after Elvis is saying that he's going to leave the building, I've left the building, blah blah blah, the quartet starts playing very very high harmonics with many high notes, and it's supposed to mimic in the sound of a distant roaring audience, going like, stuff like that. So there's a point where you're wondering, Elvis is everywhere. Yes, he may be dead, he may not be dead, but the idea is that his spirit and what he's given to an entire generation of people and to music as a whole, how he's tilted the balance in the entire fabric of pop music, is something that we're saying is going to live on. You know that desert island scene where you say, if you could only have one food on a desert island, what would it be? I would say Chinese food, because this Chinese food has so many different things. There's Szechuan, there's like Taiwanese food, there's all sorts of food within the Chinese genre. And classical music to me is that same way, because you can dig deep and you could get a lot of jazz in Debussy and Ravel, and even in Beethoven's middle string quartets. You can actually hear a lot of that stuff coming out in terms of the rhythmic freedom and the harmonies. And why I think that this is such a wonderful idea is that classical music has in many ways informed all the music that we have, especially in the Western side of things. So why I thought it was interesting to program Elvis Everywhere, and a piece that somebody wrote for us, his name is Dan Becker in San Francisco, wrote Lockdown, and it's a driving piece. Like every note is piled on top of each other, and it's always accounted for, and it just drives to this inevitable close, and it's this huge moment. And audiences like that because they get it, they understand it. The reason why we want to do things like this, where you're not sure whether it's rock, you're not sure if it's comical, you're not sure whether it's necessarily just Haydn, and we are going to be playing just Haydn, just Mozart quartets, but it's going to be juxtaposed with all sorts of different types of music, given a long range of music that was written in the past 10 years to 250 years ago. So that is why we wanted to explore the idea of what is classical. Because, yeah, you could be a historian and purist and put a fence around what classical music really is, but it's a celebration of music as a whole. My name is Adrian Fung. I play the cello in the Aara String Quartet. Please come to the Harborfront Center. We're playing at the WestJet stage on July 29th.